I like the Fox. I always have 2 blades on me and being willing to deploy the knife.
It's Steff and Banta. I'm here with my good friend Randy Rozzell. We're the Patriot Point Show. Today we're going to be discussing the EDC, the everyday carry of what a retired, highly decorated Navy SEAL, former chief, kind of carries day to day. We're in Texas, specifically the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So, when I first met Randy, I noticed he carries a lot of blades, and that's like one of the main things that he's really comfortable, that he prioritizes in his kit. So I would just ask you, what do you carry? Why do you carry it? The experience you have with some edged weapons and some of the training you have with that, and why you choose the certain blades that you choose, and some of the training you've had behind them.
Yeah, so, well, thanks for asking, Stefan. I do teach self-defense a lot, and a lot of my clients, they notice just like you that I always have 2 blades on me. And I get asked a question a lot, hey, what are those 2 knives that you carry on you? The first one I carry on me is a karambit. I like the Fox karambit. Emerson always makes a karambit. I think half-face blades, also makes a karambit, right? And we gotta always, do a shout out to, our Frogman brothers, right? Or my Frogman brother there. But I like the Fox, and the reason is, it's got, just like the Emerson, and there's a few others like that, like this one, it's got this blade technology. And the reason I like the karambit so much is because you carry it with an upside down grip like this. And instead of having to really have any like knife skill, like, when you think about like Steven Seagal and Under Siege and him and Tommy Lee Jones fighting it out, clink, 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 right? You simply just fight your own fight. Plus, this knife looks pretty scary, right? It comes out, you hear it click. It can be a deterrent and de-escalator,
for sure.
Right then and there. Also, with another reason, I like to carry this blade and carry it the way that I do carry it is I like to, there's a little bit more finesse, right, to deploy a karambit with the wave than there is just a pure straight blade. So I carry this on my right side because I'm right-handed, and there's a little bit of a, torquing to the outside of my pocket and pulling forward that I have to do to deploy it, even though it's very, very easy. But you can see that the way I hold it right here is if I have an attacker coming at me and I have to cover or block, the working end of the blade always faces the attacker, right? Additionally, I can pull my concealed carry and not stab myself, right? If my hand gets hit, right, I still have my blade. So I'm a big fan of these finger loops and versus, yes, exactly, to help me retain my knife. Should I happen to fall? Should I happen to trip? Should I happen to get hit? Right? Now I've still got my blade in my hand. Very, very, very difficult to disarm me with this type of blade. And I can simply just fight my own fight, right? I can throw normal strikes, right? Jabs, punches, crosses, uppercuts, anything with this in my hand, and I'm simply just going to tear up the attacker, right? Now, karambit more flays, right, than say a regular fixed blade knife, right? We think of that more as like just punching, right? This will usually grab and tend to wrap. I was able to, what made me a big believer in the karambit was I was able to go to a school where I got to use some edged weapons that we had made during the school on some pig carcasses. And they brought out a pig carcass, and my buddy had a karambit, and he's like, Randy, you got to try this. And I threw an uppercut, and the tip of the blade caught it down around its femoral, buried itself to the hilt, and it came out in the shoulder. So it just literally flayed this thing up. And then I threw a punch at its neck. I caught its trachea, came all the way out the backside of its neck, and the whole thing, it was probably about a 300-pound pig, just went
part of the spine.
On the, yeah, and it was nasty. And I became a believer that day, and I felt like I just, went through butter with the thing. And I was literally on Amazon that day ordering. The first one I had was an Emerson, And now the reason I like the Fox versus Emerson is is the Fox has got one loop where the Emerson has got two loops, right? So I find my finger is easier to go through one loop versus two loops. Both very high quality knives. There's a lot on Amazon that you can buy. There's a lot of Chinese knockoffs. If you're going to buy a knife to save your life, don't buy the Chinese knockoff.
100%.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right? It's a life-saving tool. I also don't use this to cut cardboard or open letters or anything else. It's not a utility knife. It's a life-saving knife, right? I'll carry a Leatherman on me, when I need to open up letters, right?
Sure.
Or cut cardboard or anything else. So this knife is purely for life-saving. I don't use it as a utility knife. I'm quite a fan of it. Now, the knife that I carry on the other side is a Sock P. So there are Chinese knockoffs of the Sock P2 on Amazon. I recommend, getting the Benchmade, not the Chinese knockoff. The Kydex sheath on them was super tight with the blade. And that's not anything you want, right? You want that blade to deploy smoothly.
Easily, yeah.
And if you buy Benchmade, you're going to be buying a quality product, right? They've been around a while. And Fox or Emerson or Benchmade, none of these people give me any money for this. It's just the ones I happen to carry because I find that they're quality. Now, I like the Sock P. It looks like this. It's again, I like holding it in the upside down fashion, right? And I like the original version, not the 2.0. And the reason is it's edged on both sides. Mm-hmm. Now, it does feel a little dainty in my hand. It's super light. I heard, you're not going to notice when you're carrying it, right? So it doesn't weigh down your pockets or anything. That's one thing I like about it. And it's also got the finger loop. The 2.0 version has got some serrations on it. And the reason you don't really want serrations on a blade that you're going to use for just self-defense is it can stick on bone, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't want anything that's going to stick on bone that I can't just stab in and come out. And this one is really strictly just so I can get back to my other one. I use this one to create distance and get back. Maybe I can pull my concealed carry now, all right, or get to my other blade. Or, what I love about this thing too is I can simply fight my own fight. I can clinch people. Yeah. Right? I can still tackle people to the ground. If I have to cover because they're coming at me.
Working
with
in out there, yeah.
If they're coming at me with a pipe or a haymaker punch and I've got to cover my head and close that distance, they're running into the working end of the blade. And again, it's very difficult to disarm me. I can still pull my concealed carry, still take shots. And a lot of people don't really think about things like this when they buy blades.
It's kind of a redundancy too, right? Because if you reach left hand and they grab or post on there and pin you, you can always go right hand to the other blade.
100%.
For that, they pin that. You can go concealed carry.
I can always be pinned up against the wall, a car, something like that. Yeah. Maybe I can't get my hand there, depending on how I've been grabbed or the fight, but I can usually get to the other ones. Now, for operators, when they carry a blade, I recommend that they carry a blade on their kit up high where they could get to it on either side. So I like to always carry mine candid off to the left as an operator because my primary, was up, but if it got pinned like this, and I could still reach here with my left hand, and my right hand would always go to my secondary. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I don't want it center line, I want to candid off to the left, is, we're both black belts in jiu-jitsu. You've been stuck in the mount, right? And you've had people crush down on you. Well, if I have it center line and somebody's crushed down on me, I can't get to it.
Same for even appendix carry with a pistol as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, somebody's got their hooks in, they're pressing their hips,
you
smothered, you can't get to it. But if I've got it candid off to the left, I can still get to it. Now, of course, if somebody's throwing punches on me in mount, I'm not going for my knife, right? Because I need my hands up to protect my face. I'd rather do a regular mount defense.
Yeah, trap and
roll.
Right?
Yeah, trap, bridge, and roll. And to get them off me or some other technique. I wouldn't do an elbow escape because,
Get your face hammered.
yeah, exactly, 100%, right? But then I would look to get to that knife or get back to my feet, then get back to my knife, get back to my concealed carry. So a lot of people don't think about that. They think about like, hey, well, I've got a knife. Well, there are times that you can deploy this knife and it can be a deterrent, it can be a de-escalator. There are times you can deploy this knife and it can actually be used against you, right? And that's a lot of the times we're on the ground, right? The last thing I would hate to have happen is for me to go for one of my knives, get punched in the face, or get my hand pinned, then be disarmed, right? So if you are going to carry knives on you, they're great tools. Realize where they're an applicable tool and realize when they're a non-applicable tool.
Were you ever worried about guys grabbing your knife from your kit and trying to poke you?
No, because if you look at this sock P knife right here, right? Hopefully our viewers can see this. That is very hard to see, right? From a kit that has gone through some molly gear, and this is it. Now, if I had a big K-bar Rambo knife like this, and there's a big handle there, well, yeah, that's something else somebody could very easily see, grab, use against me. This, people don't even know what that is. Yeah. Half the time, this is sticking out of my pocket. People think it's my keys. Right, because unless you're, unless you're, into tactical stuff like we are, most people really have just no clue what the heck that thing is. So that's that's why I like to carry these. I do have my own blade coming out eventually.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Right, it's a version. It's kind of like the Sock P. It's a little thicker. It will break through bone versus potentially getting broken by bone. And it's got a seatbelt cutter in it, which, if we think about a vehicle rollover for operators, if you think about having to get, your vehicle got hit by an IED, you can cut yourself out of the seatbelt if it rolls over, or if you got caught in your risers on a jump, right? Because we would often carry a hook knife with us when we were jumping, but that hook knife is just in case I got caught up in my risers and had to cut. Well, if I have a knife already up here in my kit that I can use for self-defense and to cut myself out of a seatbelt.
Multiple use cases.
Yeah, so I always like carrying things that have more than one purpose, right? So
for sure. Hopefully
that blade will be coming out soon. Maybe I talk to some of my Frogman brothers that are already making blades, and maybe we can co-collaborate.
That would be awesome.
Some people ask me, have you ever used a blade in combat? I had a chance. I did do it one time. I fucked it all up.
Yeah?
Yeah, I completely fucked it up. I had a chance to do a sentry takedown. We had a guy stalking us one night down on the bottom of a wadi. And
where's a wadi?
A wadi is a dried up riverbed. Okay. So we were in Afghanistan, and we had got dropped off. And we were patrolling to our target, which was about 4 clicks north of where we got dropped off at. And there was a compound that during the day had been cleared by our air assets, and nobody was supposed to be there. Well, once we got dropped off, that had changed. And it ended up being full of Taliban fighters, this compound that was on our way, and they heard the helicopter land. So they came out, and they were driving in a truck, and they were doing recon by fire. And recon by fire just means they start to shoot all over the place and hope that we shoot back at them.
So they can find out your location.
100%, that's right. What they didn't realize was they had about 40 SEAL lasers on them. So it wasn't a really good tactic. However, we weren't about to give away our position. These guys, we still had a mission to continue with. So we ended up calling in an airstrike on them and getting a little bit later. Yeah. But they headed south down the wadi, and they had set a guy north up the wadi, and he was patrolling for us, looking for us. And we were on the military crest of this ridge, which is, the military crest is, if you think about the top of a mountain, or if you look up the mountain, you have people patrolling down, at the top of the mountain. Well, it's so easy to see, like, okay, look, there's 7 to wars, you know, going down going on the top. So we always patrol halfway in between, right? Kind of close to the top. But if you look, you can't see any
shadow and
you can't see any backlighting, right? You can't see the silhouettes of people patrolling. So our rear security had stopped us. And he was like, hey, we got somebody down in the wadi tracking, looking for us. So we stop and we kind of watch him. And my chief looks over at me and he's like, Randy, take off your ruck. Go get him. I was like, oh, fuck, yeah. I finally got to do some Navy SEAL frogman shit. At this time I had shot people, but I never, I'd been in some, later on in that deployment, I got some hand-to-hand stuff, but I never had got to use my knife.
What deployment was this?
This was in 09.
Okay. Was this what number was that?
It was probably my third deployment as a whole in the military, but it was one of my first combat ones as a SEAL.
Okay.
So I was super excited, and I hadn't heard of, a SEAL getting a, a knife kill. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to finally get to do this, right? And do you know what shell is? So it's really loose gravel, right? And the mountains in Afghanistan are covered in it. So he's like, Randy, take off your ruck. So I take off my ruck. I'm super excited. I have my knife. It was not a K-bar, right? It was, I think it was like some shitty Kershaw knife, right, that I had next to my pistol. I wasn't carrying it in the right place. When I had gone through combatives, we didn't talk about knives at all, right? Like, we didn't even call it combatives. We called it something else back then. And literally, like, nobody had ever taught me anything with a knife other than when I was with the Marine Corps martial arts. And it was literally slash, stab, parry, like World War II type. And I'm like,
put the bayonet on.
Attach bayonets. Yeah. So you thought as a SEAL, like we would know how to do this stuff, or somebody would have taught us. But no, the only thing I had going on in my head was movie stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm working my way down the mountain to come up behind them, and I slip on the shell like I completely ate shit. Like just boom. And I'm like, holy crap. Yeah. I hope nobody saw
Total
that.
darkness at the time? Or?
Well, I was on nods, but it was in the middle of the night, right? Yeah. So I jump up real quick, right? I'm like, shit, he didn't hear me, right? And the guy didn't hear me because he was still well ahead of me in the wadi. And I look up to see if any of my frogman brothers saw me, and no, they were still all looking at him. So I was like, oh, thank God nobody saw that, because I never heard the end of it, right?
Yeah.
So I get up behind him, right? And I'm like trying to be sneaky and everything else. I pull my knife and I go to muffle him, and I stab him right here in the neck, next to the carotid subclavian right here. But I didn't have him secured right. So I'm very passionate about teaching SEALs how to do sentry takedown, because the one time I got to do it, I fucked it up.
Yeah.
Right? And now I teach them the way, and of course I played that, over and over again in my head thousands of times. And then when I became the chief of combatives, I taught the guys the right way to do it, so they didn't fuck it up the way I did. So I come up behind him, I go to muffle him, and I stab him. And, my blade's only about 3 inches long, right?
3 inches more than enough.
Yeah.
That's
what I've heard.
Yeah.
If you do it twice. No, I'm just joking. But, and he just collapses. He just like literally falls at my feet, because I didn't have him like supported into my chest. Like, and I'm just thinking like, okay, cool. I'm going to stab him, and like, I'm going to have him, and I'm going to, no, he just, boom, hits the ground like a potato sack. And he's screaming. He's ah!
Yeah.
And I could already hear my chief coming through my headset going, shut him the fuck up, Randy. So I just boot his face.
Yeah.
I pretty much knock him out.
Yeah.
Then I get him zip tied. He had a flashlight. His flashlight went flying, and I'm searching him. He had like a knife on him. And, he had an old gun, an old like Russian Makarov that was like, I'm pretty sure was rusted, like shot. Yeah. Like, I don't know if that thing would have shot. So I get him zip tied, and I'm marching him back up over the hill so we can bring our terp over. And he keeps spitting, right? The whole way. So finally I get him on the other side of the ridge. We bring the terp over,
Spin on you.
And Huh?
Spitting at you?
No, he's just spitting like.
Okay.
So get him over, and I get to red light him, and blood is just fucking all over him, like it's pumping all fucking out. He's like covered in blood. His beard's covered in blood, and he's got teeth. He was spitting out his fucking teeth. His teeth was in his beard from when I booted his face.
Yeah.
And of course the Terps asked him questions, hey, how many people there, blah, 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 blah. And then he just kind of falls over. Yeah. And I'm like, fuck.
Well, that worked.
Well, that was that. And I was just, hindsight, I would have done things completely different. Yeah. And I teach team guys now, and I teach sentry takedown, not to make my mistake, how to muffle people well, hold them secure well, expect them to collapse. If they have a rifle slung on them, how to make that rifle not make any noise, how to continue to damage the C-spine so we stop them from breathing, and, I think I've showed you. Yeah. But yeah, man, it was pretty fucking funny. I wish I had the whole thing on camera. Yeah. It would have been like, exactly what not to do when do a sentry takedown. Right. So that was my one story that I got to actually, I wish I hadn't fucked it up. I wish I could sit here and tell you how Billy badass I was and Jason Bourne this guy, but it just didn't happen that way, but it did make me very passionate about teaching it correctly and what I would do again if I had that chance over again. Unfortunately, I never had the chance to pull my knife again and do that again. But
what did you carry on further deployments like after that?
After that, I carried, when the SOC P came out, I started carrying the SOC P because I liked that. After that, I carried I carried a K-bar. Okay. And the reason was I wanted the sentimental reasons. I should have carried this on that op, but I was given a knife when I graduated BUDS. It was Chief Matthew Burgoyes, who had died in Tarnak Farms in Afghanistan. And I wanted to get some revenge for him. Yeah. Right? Get some. Yeah. So after that, I started carrying that K-bar on me. And that thing would have done the trick. Right. Sure. Like that guy would have more reach. Yeah, it's got a little bit more reach, probably, the guy would have collapsed the same way, but he probably would have died instantly. It was probably a good thing he didn't die instantly because that way I was able to actually march him back up the, but, I was prepared for him to try to turn around and kill me, and shoot me. I couldn't tell, I knew he didn't have an AR on him, but you can't tell whether these guys have pistols and knives and everything else. He did have a flashlight on him. But yeah, I became very, through different combat deployments, I became very passionate about combatives and about teaching guys the right way and not making my mistakes and, and then teaching them how to do it right had I had the chance to do it over again, what I wish I would have done. And then as a civilian, I deployed my knife one time. I was at a Starbucks, and I had some guys that didn't look like they fit the neighborhood. For sure. It was actually pretty early in the morning, which was funny because it was cold outside. It was during football season. This is when I was living in San Diego, and lived in a pretty much Mayberry place in San Diego called Rancho Penasquitos. Great place. And there were two guys there that literally just looked like they walked out of a movie of gangbangers. Yeah. And I had never seen people like that in Rancho Penasquitos. I knew pretty much everyone, and I just got off my last deployment and just started as the chief of combatives and happened to teach knife.
Wrong guy to fuck with.
Yeah, I was literally the wrong guy to fuck with. Yeah. And so, but I didn't look like a team guy, right? I was at Starbucks. We were getting ready to go to church that morning, and my wife was like, just had 20 million things going on. So I was like, hey, how about I How about I take the kids, get the kids out of the house for a few minutes, we'll come pick you up, before we go to church. She was like, that would be awesome. So I took the kids to Starbucks and went to go, get them some breakfast. And it was just me and them sitting outside. It was football season. It was a little chilly out. And I see these guys walking. One's on a bicycle, like a little lowrider bicycle, and one's walking beside him. And, I've kind of got my eye on them, and I'm watching them, and they're walking past the Starbucks, and they bust around the corner. And I'm like, okay, they're gone. No big deal. No threat. And, now I'm opening up, my biscuit for my daughter and, getting my son's breakfast ready and everything. And all of a sudden, this bicycle wheels up right next to me. And the guy's like, hey, man, are you going for the Chargers today? And I'm like, that's weird. I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm going for the Chargers. And, he says a couple of other things, and, so I'm sizing him up now.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm looking, he's got a hoodie on, so I'm trying to see, can I see any printing? Does he have any weapons? Where's his buddy at? Well, his buddy was standing on the corner of Starbucks. He's kind of looking left and right. He's kind of
scoping it
doing,
out.
He's kind of scoping it out, kind of, hey, he's, is it
Bystander,
clear? And I'm like, all right, some shit's about to happen. And I remember the guy tells Randy Lynn, my daughter, like, hey, little girl, that's a pretty dress. And she's like 5 at the time.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, thank you. Like completely impervious. And then right then my son goes, Daddy, my straw. And he pushed his straw through the top of that Starbucks milk cup. And, you can't get those things back out, right? Like it's impossible. So I stood up just to show them that they're dealing with I was actually bigger than I am now. I was 200 now. I was about 210, 215 then. But I had a jacket on, and I was in dad mode, and you couldn't really tell that, I was a Navy SEAL that liked to lift weights all the time, And I end up popping the karambit out, just like that, cut the top off the milk cup, whack, pulled the straw out, said, there you go, son. Well, that guy ends up backing that bicycle up,
For sure.
And
I would too,
he's like, well, sir, you have a good day. And I'm like, yeah, you have a good day too. Go Chargers. And they were gone.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what was going to happen, right? I know I didn't have a good spidey sense about it, right? And I learned through combat to listen to that spidey sense.
100%.
And I was already prepared, but, just timing. My son had that situation happen and gave me a perfect reason to pull my knife out.
Yeah.
And,
De-escalation even.
well, I pulled it out and they wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Right? So right then I kind of know they weren't armed,
Yeah.
They were probably just going to try to use intimidation on somebody that they thought looked like a victim. And then when I stood up too, they're like, I'm not a tall guy, but I'm not a small guy.
You're a small guy, for sure.
And they're like, okay. So just the fact that I stood up, I deployed a knife.
Yeah.
I showed them I wasn't a victim. I showed them I was willing to fight, and that I was armed. It shut everything down. They wanted no part of it. They were gone. So, and I couldn't help but chuckle to myself, like, oh man, did you guys pick the wrong target?
The one guy just got back. Area,
Oh man, I just got back off deployment, and now I'm in combatives, and I happen to teach them knife. And I'm just like, man, and you got me in Papa Bear mode,
different level,
that is a different level of defense, when you think about defending, your wife and your children. And so I couldn't help but chuckle, like, oh man, you guys totally picked the wrong target right here. Not that I wanted anything bad to happen in front of my children. I never want my children to see that side of that part of me. But just being armed, just having a knife on me, and being willing to deploy the knife and show them that I was willing to not be a victim.
It's enough. In a lot
My
of cases,
children had no clue what happened. They still don't know today that we were in trouble right then.
Yep.
And I was able to hide that all from them, to shelter them from that, protect them from that, and then go pick my wife up and go to church. I never saw those guys again.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of times just being empowered and just having the knowledge kind of saves you from having to use it.
So I'm very big on, when it comes to the self-defense stuff, having my clients carry knives if they're willing to. Not everyone's willing to, but also, I'm big on Yeah, obviously, I converted you, right? But, I'm also big on people concealed carrying, right? If they're trained.
For sure.
And if they're comfortable. But with that as well, as a self-defense expert, most self-defense attacks happen within 7 to 10 feet. It is very, very difficult to get your weapon deployed within 7 to 10 feet if somebody's coming at you.
And get rounds off, right?
And get rounds off, right? Accurate rounds, right? So a knife can come into play there, right? Getting off the railroad tracks, circling, these things will help you deploy that weapon. But, a lot of people aren't really comfortable deploying their weapon with one hand. They don't really practice it, right? As far as their firearm. They tend drop both hands to get a quick draw. Well, if you're already coming at me and that haymaker punch is happening and I'm dropping both my hands, you're going to knock me out before I ever get to that weapon. But could I drop one hand and deploy a knife quite easily?
For sure.
Absolutely. So that means I can frame, I can block, I can strike, I can post, all these other things with my other hand to help keep you away while I'm getting off those railroad tracks. Then, if I can create distance with that knife, then I can get back to my firearm to help me deal with the threat or any additional threats that are coming.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of my 2 cents on the knife. That's why I carry the knives I carry. I highly recommend them for self-defense and just for de-escalation.
Yeah, 100%. Be on the lookout for Randy's knife coming out soon in the future. We'll
I don't know what I'm going to call it.
I still haven't even got my hands on one.
Yeah. Shout out to Greg Thompson who come out with the Sock P. He's a friend of mine. He's a good dude, high level jiu-jitsu guy as well.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it's a great knife and I love it. But
Always improvements. Always improvements.
Yeah, there's always improvements, right? And I don't know what I'm going to call mine yet, but
the Rozzell razor.
Oh, maybe. Hey,
Yeah.
there we
Came up
go.
with that. That's not a bad one, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. So I don't know. Maybe if any of our listeners have any good ideas, they can let us know.
Yeah, let us know for sure.
Yeah, we're open to suggestions. All right.
Cool.
Well, is there anything else I can answer for you, Stefan, about
I don't think so. Yeah, I think that pretty much
knives
answered
or what I carry and
all my questions.
kind of my experiences with it?
I don't think so. We'll be coming, so I can learn as well. And for, the viewers, I'm sure I'll be asking you a bunch of more questions on your general kit and setup. But for
Yeah, and if people want to know how to defend themselves against a knife, I just did a video series on knife defense. It'll be on It'll be on my website at awctactical.com. And if you're interested in that, there's how to defend against a knife attack.
Yeah, we just filmed that yesterday. It was
Yeah.
a few hours, so it was a lot of good content. I'm learning a bunch as well, coming from a jiu-jitsu background, but there's a lot to learn in the combative side of things, so it's a whole new world.
Yeah, it's a little different.
A little different. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, follow us. We're going to be bringing you a lot of free content and just a lot of information for you. We're trying to connect with you. Randy and I are both, proud Americans. We want to bring people knowledge and equip you with skill and kind of plug you into our network. So we just did a pretty long form video on Randy and some of his everyday EDC setup, specifically with edge weapons like knives and things along those lines. So very informative. I learned a bunch. Give it a listen and then let us know what you think. Contact us if you have questions or concerns or you want to know specific information. We're at your disposal. So especially as we're a little bit smaller, use us as a resource and just learn. Do the same thing that I'm doing. The same thing that he's going to be doing. We're going to be bringing people on this show as well. It's not just going to be Randy and I. So follow along for that. We got a lot in store in the next few months. So thanks for watching.